letter that said engineering was the field for me, but all the rest of them were something different. And
Mm-hmm.
once I learned that about myself, everything made sense. I realized that I was an engineer because I was good in science and math, and people had encouraged me down that field. And I honestly, it paid for my education. I didn't don't have any student loans as a result of being an engineering student. So in that regard, I'm very grateful that that happened. However, instead of, I think you can look at life in two ways. I can look at it and say, I wasted all that time in undergraduate as an engineering student, or I can say, you know what? I have a nice foundation I can build on, and every experience I had can lead me toward what I want to do in the future. And I chose the latter. Um, Go ahead.
No, no, no. I was taking a breath. I was going to say something because it almost seems to me that it sounds like one of those situations where, and this seems to happen. I see this happen a lot with bright young African Americans like yourself. I mean, you were a superstar student. You know, you were kind of the top of everything, and what happens is it seems that maybe in the teenage years, we kind of feel a little bit of pressure to kind of pick a major that sounds really good when people ask us, so what are you going to do? Oh, I'm going to be an engineer, or I'm going to be a doctor, or I'm going to be a lawyer, right? And it doesn't, I think, sometimes it almost seems that it keeps us from kind of exploring the breadth of all the options that might be available to us. Do you feel that way kind of when you look in hindsight at kind of the trajectory that you took to get to where you are right now?
That's 100% true. It's still true today. When I want to increase the level of credibility I have with an audience, all I need to say is, I'm a chemical engineer by degree. And immediately the gasps come out, right? They're like, oh. But when you say, oh, I am leading a training and development organization for leaders, people are like, oh, that's nice. But I mean, there's something that if you say you're a neurosurgeon, that commands a certain amount of respect in people, whether or not it's warranted or not. And so, yes, you're 100% correct. There was pressure because when I said I wanted to be an engineer, people were excited. They were very excited about that. And I responded to that excitement.
Interesting, interesting. Well, it's interesting that you talk about the excitement of people when you tell them you're an engineer, but I'm actually more excited about what you do now. I mean, because you're a leader. I mean, you're a vice president of training and development. You know, with reality based leadership. I mean, that sounds like a pretty cool and an amazing kind of accomplishment. So why do you feel that people don't respect that as much as they did, when you said that you're an engineer, or you know what I mean? Like why, or maybe why do people react differently to one versus the other?
Yeah, leadership is one of those things that people think everyone can do it. In fact, part of the reason that I have this awesome work I get to do every day is because leadership is one of the only jobs that people will throw you into and not give you any development. They'll say, hey, yeah, sure, take these 27 people and lead them go forward and conquer. But I can't drive a city bus without any training, but I
Hmm.
can lead people without training. And so when you contrast that with engineering, most students couldn't make it through the first semester of engineering curriculum. And so because of that, they associate competence, intelligence, rigor with being able to finish an engineering program. I'm not sure that that's all true, but I do believe that that's what happens in people's minds when they get excited about technical professions over something like leadership development.
Interesting. Well, I think this is a good opportunity. Then it sounds for us to set the record straight. In terms of what it really takes to be a leader, because as you know, there are a lot of people out here who say, "Oh, I'm a leader. I'm going to be a leader." Or you even hear people, your people's kids say, "I'm a leader," right? And the kids haven't got any training. They're like 8 years old, but they're already saying, "I'm a leader." Um, as a person who trains leaders and who has studied leadership, what is it about leadership that many of us are missing in terms of really understanding what it actually takes? For those of us who do it badly.
Well, if we've not done it badly, we've at least probably been subjected to someone who's done it pretty poorly at once, or at some point in life. And what I will say is, many times what I see is there's two things. One is trying to have rules without relationships. People will follow you to the ends of the earth if they feel like you don't have to feel sorry for them, but you at least need to be able to empathize with whatever their predicament is at the time. And then being responsive. So we're so afraid to have short conversations around feedback to say, hey, this is what you're doing well. Let's talk about how we can build on that. This is what you're not doing so well. Let's talk about how we can work around that, mitigate those risks, get somebody else to support you. But having those conversations, especially in America, we're so used to talking more about people than we do to them and somehow expecting them to change. So that's one thing that I see regularly with leaders who don't do it well. Now, for the people that I've watched and I say, man, that person is an amazing leader. They spend the time with touches. So, what do I mean by that? They understand that group coaching, mass emails is not how you get things done. That if Boyce and Nicole are working together, that Boyce and Nicole need to actually talk to each other at least once a week, just to course correct, make sure we're aligned about if I worked for your organization, that I know where you're trying to drive it. Um, and you can't get that to me all the way, always through email. It's not the most effective communication strategy, but because it's efficient, we use it.
That's really interesting. Now, I'm actually taking notes here because this is insightful stuff. I mean, I think it's something that people have to understand because I know that in my own life as a de facto leader, when I started seeing that that I would do things and say things and people responded to that, it made me think about the responsibility of leadership. And one of the things that I learned really early in the game is that there's not a whole lot of room for your ego. There's room for confidence. You have to have confidence, but arrogance will get you destroyed. I mean, the rug will be ripped right out from under you. And then when I started thinking about it even more, and maybe you can elaborate on this, I started concluding again in my really uneducated way. I haven't been formally trained in this like you have. I started concluding that leadership was service. That literally the leader had to be the person who was the first one to take one for the team, make the sacrifices. And I got to a point where I felt that even though I was able to influence the people that worked for me and supported me, it was almost as if I felt that I had that there was that it was the other way around. I didn't feel like I was the dog. I kind of felt like I was a little bit like the tail, and you go back and forth. Can you talk about that a little bit in terms of leadership really being a form of service and your perspective on that?
Yeah, there's actually a book called Servant Leadership. In fact, the author's name is escaping me right now, but it's an excellent book about what it means to get people to want to give you discretionary effort. So the largest conglomerates in the world, like Gallup or Connexa, they call that engagement. In layman's terms, it's called happiness. So how happy you are at work and how willing you are to give me that extra effort without me working towards it, that's all, it's all related to how I am internally feeling about my immediate manager. People think that it's about my circumstances, that it might be whether or not I get to dress a certain way, do I have freedom or not. Those things are important, but my relationship to my immediate manager is definitely a driver for that. And some of the best work I've seen in that area has been done by a guy named Marcus Buckingham, who will show you the data across thousands of companies and what it looks like in the same areas with the same ability in terms of revenue generation, but they're very, very different in terms of revenue generation based on who the leader is. And then when you look at what those leaders do differently, the ones who generate more revenue are the ones who understand what you just said, that servant leadership is important because the skills that got you to this point, those things that were like your hustle, the things that made you, write multiple books or get different businesses started are not the same things or the same competencies that help you be a good leader. And that's where people get derailed. What drives you before is a healthy sense of pride and guilt, driving through things through to completion. But as soon as you become a leader, it's about courage. It's about being able to take a hit for the team if the team is screwed up instead of pointing out who's to blame, right? It's about having tough conversations in an honest and kind way with people so that they still, again, feel like giving you discretionary effort because you can't be there with them all the time.
So, let's say I'm somebody who's in an organization of any form,
Mhm.
and I've been made into a leader because I'm good at what I do. right?
Yeah.
I'm an engineer and I'm the best engineer, so they obviously want to make me the manager and all this other stuff. But I've never really led people before, and I'm trying to make that transition in a meaningful way. What are some things I should do in order to be an effective leader, given that maybe I've never done it before in my life?
Yeah, so the first thing I would say is there's some critical books I think that you should read. Not that reading fixes everything, but some reading that will help you to test some things out, some on-the-job training. So one, and whenever you're changing your job, period, there's a book called The First 90 Days. So you're going into a new business, going into a new market, working for someone new. It's a good idea to read the first 90 days. If you don't want to buy the book, there's plenty of downloads on, if you just Google the first 90 days, to tell you what kinds of questions you should ask and what kinds of things you should be looking for when you change your approach. So that's one thing. The second thing is an exercise that I take new leaders through that I think we can actually do it right now on this call. So I want you to think about the person who you really liked working with or for, or someone who you felt was an amazing leader, coach, mentor, or teacher. So it could be professional or personal. Sometimes people think of their dad, other times people think of coaches. It doesn't matter, but just someone you feel like, yep, that person was amazing. And I would work with them no matter where we were. You got somebody in mind, Dr. Watkins?
Yes, I'm thinking about. Actually, I was thinking about Dr. Cornel West.
Okay.
Yeah, every time I've been around him, Um, I've always felt respected and appreciated. I've seen him interact with other people, and he has this amazing human touch
Uh-huh.
that just is extraordinary to me. And and I think that what I loved the most was not just authenticity in his personality, but also um, just that human side of him that sort of says, I'm not sort of dealing with you as if I am some sort of special person and you're not. He deals with you in a way that says we're all special. We can all be special together, and I actually like that a lot. So yes, that's who I'm thinking about.
So, if we were really doing the exercise, I did it for you. I was taking notes while you were talking. The things that you said about Dr. Cornel West was that he was authentic, you respected him, you appreciated him. He was amazing with the human touch, down to earth, and he made everyone feel special, basically.
Yes.
So then I would, your list is 100% emotional characteristics or EQ. You didn't say because he's smart. You didn't say because he can drive projects through to completion. You didn't say that he could put Gantt charts together. And so when I do this usually I'm in a class of 50 to any number of people, and I have them write down their descriptors on a post it note, just one descriptor per post it note. And then I have them place on a board that I have a large board in front of the room. And so when you got lots of people, you would have some people would say things like smart. And so I put that on the IQ side of the board. And then I have everyone else put their post-it notes on the EQ side of the board. So anything that's related to actual intelligence that you can measure, put those things on the right side of the board. And then emotional intelligence things, put those on the left side of the board. And it's a nice visual depiction. So if it were just you and me, all of your descriptors of Dr. Cornel West would be emotional intelligence ones. Zero of them are about how smart you are. And so that is one of the major differences between leading people and just being a peer of people. How smart you are matters not very much at all. How smart your people are is what matters the most. And how can you inspire them? And some people need a little inciting, but mostly, how do you inspire them to move things forward? And so you just demonstrated it here as well when you talk about Dr. Cornel West. Now, when I'm teaching about leadership, most of the time, people have that foundational stuff already down, though. They've got the emotional intelligence stuff down. They have good working relationships, but maybe they're not getting the results they want. Maybe things are highly complex, lots of change, and maybe they're growing extensively, and then they're running into some more complicated challenges.
Hmm. Interesting. Well, I will say that when I think about leadership, another thing I think about is something that a pastor that I respect, Dr. Kevin Cosby, once said, and he's actually also the president of an HBCU in Kentucky, Simmons College. And I remember he said something. It was really simple, and he said he was talking about young people, leading young people, but he said, "Before you correct, you must connect."
Yes.
And and one of and I held on to that because what I decided was that I think that one of the universal things that can bring people together and connect human beings is love. That no matter what a person's background is, or any living creature's background is, if they know that you care about them, they're going to respond to you, right? So I started, especially with young people, but really adults too, because I think we're all little kids on the inside. I would always try to connect. You just listen. If they have an issue, you hear it out. You try to empathize, and then you notice that they trust you and they respond to you. And if you need something from them, the give and take kind of works. And I find that that just works so much better than barking at people or using your authority to try to pound people into submission or threatening people and all that other stuff. What comes to mind when I sort of describe that to you?
Um, the slow, and what you're describing is more of a dictator style of leadership. Things are slow. People are afraid. Trust is not there. Conversations that need to occur don't always occur. And there are some environments where that approach works. I'm thinking of the military. Generally, though, it works because people have already bought into that structure and that idea. And so when because they have bought into it, then it works for them. But I also know that one of the people that I like to listen to his YouTube videos a lot is not Dr. General Mark Welsh. And you know what? He is in the military and he understands that caring about your people is important. And I would challenge that General Mark Welsh probably gets even better results than other people because he's figured that out.
Mm, very interesting. General Mark Welsh. I will write that down. Okay, well, you know what? I've taken so much of your time, and I know you're a busy woman. You got a lot of stuff going on. And if it's okay with you, I'd like to talk to you again in the future about different angles of leadership and some more stuff that's on your mind, if that's okay.
Absolutely perfectly fine.
All right, all right. And if people want to get in touch with you, Nicole, how can they do that?
So my direct email address is nicole@cywakeman.com, or they can go to our website, realitybasedleadership.com. You can
Okay,
find me there.
okay. And you got to spell Cy Wakeman for me.
Yep, it's C as in Charlie,
Hmm.
Wakeman.
N, or M?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
So Cy short for Cynthia, Wakeman.com.
Oh, Cy Wakeman, like a man who's awake. Gotcha. Okay. Cy Wakeman. All right. Nicole at cywakeman.com. And also, everybody, you can go to realitybasedleadership.com/Nicole. And just for the record, in case you don't know, this is Nicole Price. She is the Vice President of Training and Development at Reality Based Leadership. And just a really, really smart lady who trains leaders. And so if you think you're a leader, and you haven't been trained, then you may not be the kind of leader you could be. At the very least, even if you're doing the job kind of correct, you might want to tighten up your game because leadership is incredibly important, especially in our community. Well, thank you very much, Miss Price. I appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate being here.
Absolutely. The pleasure's all mine. All right, everybody. I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from Financial Juneteenth. And until we meet again, please stay strong, be blessed, and be educated. We are gone. Peace.